Apologies, everybody, but hello, my name is Becca. I will be presenting on my master's project entitled Searching for AA Deserts. It will be a case study of this here Tucson, Arizona, back in 2023 to improve meeting area coverage. Okay. So a little bit of an overview. I will be going over the purpose of my research as well as why I wanted to do this project in the first place. And then I will move on to my processes and methodology taken in order to complete everything, as well as my results and what they could mean for the greater Tucson area as a whole, and pretty much go over any implications in the conclusion section and how this AA community here in the Tucson area could benefit from anything that I find. So the overall purpose of this project, AA in general is a vital resource for recovery from drugs and alcohol use, as there are roughly about 2 million members worldwide. I pulled that from the AA website that they have published. I've also been able to see this firsthand throughout most of my life, as I'm not personally, I've never drank in my life, but I have seen the positive implications of AA or Alcoholics Anonymous on other people's lives and how greatly people can benefit from it, which is why I wanted to start this project. And I would genuinely hate to see people suffer because of their, lack of accessibility to these meetings that could be a direct lifeline to other people. Brings me to my next point, which is AA Desert. So what is an AA Desert, right? I got this idea from a food desert. So for those of y'all who do not know, a food desert is essentially an urban area in which it is difficult to buy affordable, good quality, fresh food. This can be directly applied to AA meetings, whereas an AA desert is also an urban area or even non-urban area, which may be difficult to access AA meetings within a reasonable area. And that had brought me to the question, how could this potentially be fixed? Next slide, please. Yeah, so the process of methodology that I chose to attack this issue is to gather AA meetings that were published in a meeting book by the Tucson Area Intergroup. It's pretty much the AA hub for the Tucson area. This book specifically had meetings scheduled for the fall of 2023. By the time I'd gotten this book, a new, more updated meeting schedule hadn't been published yet. So I used that one since it was most recent and up-to-date book. So I geocoded all of these meeting locations into ArcGIS Pro, along with obtaining census block information from the Pima County, from the Pima County website that publicly accessible. Use the meeting locations to run a hotspot, kernel density hotspot analysis to see if there was any clustering, as well as finally running a suitability analysis with the meetings, the census block information, as well as public buildings also found on the Pima County website in order to see if there was any new locations that I could find suitably for new meetings going forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as for my results, what's shown on the screen right now is all the meetings at any given day of the week, plotted all at one time here on this map. As you can see, the meetings go all the way from Catalina on the north side, all the way down to the San Javier Reservation, just off of I-19, as well as to Vail, going to the east, and even into Marana, and down close to 3 Points. on the lower left-hand side. Okay, next slide, please. So going on to the kernel density analyses, I decided for this portion to use Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to show a different, how is it, like show different portions of all these meetings and see if there was any clustering patterns within each individual day of the week. So for Monday, you can see that there's clustering more towards the center. That tends to be a similar thing going through each individual day, so that'll be closer to Midtown that a lot of this clustering is happening. Although it does shift depending on the day of the week, it holistically shows that there is clustering closer to Midtown, which can be good, but also can be not as good depending on what you're looking at. It's very beneficial for people who do live in Midtown, but as you go out towards the outskirts of town, it tends to inhibit potentially people's ability to access meetings almost around the clock, as there may not be as many meetings at any given point of a particular day. Next slide, please. So this is a portion where it gets into the suitability analysis. So as you can see, I had moved back to using every single meeting all at once. On the left-hand side, you can see a map that I had made using distance or multi-ring buffers. Each ring represents a different mileage away from the points. The first ring in the middle represents 1 mile, a 1 mile radius around the point. The middle ring represents 3 miles, and the outer ring represents 5 miles away from these points. I had chosen these mileages mainly because I felt like 5 miles and further away from these points would be a relatively good distance away from each meeting to help make new meeting locations potentially. On the right-hand side, you can see that I had combined the left-hand distance buffers with census tracts to help more of like a visual aid to show the Tucson area in general. Yeah. Next slide, please. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that I imported some public buildings into ArcPro. The layer initially had a lot more points than this, so I had to limit down to what I deemed was the public points code. There were several codes that Pima County had listed for these different buildings, and upon looking at these individual locations, I deemed that code 3 was the most accessible public location. So I used this along with the distance buffers, or the multi-ring buffers, and the general meeting locations to make a final suitability analysis, which is seen on the right-hand side. So as you can see in the legend, it goes from dark green all the way to a tannish color. The tannish color being the least suitable for new meetings, and the dark green being the most suitable locations for new meetings. And if you look closely, I know it may be a little bit hard to see, but the outskirts of town, going more closer to the left-hand side, Marana and Vale, and tend to have the most suitable places for these new meetings. And Midtown does seem to have the least amount of suitability. That does not mean that there are not meeting locations suitable in Midtown that are not already used, but it just shows that in general, Midtown does tend to have the most meetings already currently available. So the outskirts of town tend to have a more need for these meetings. Yeah, next slide, please. So, for my conclusion, meetings do tend to be centralized, as you could probably tell with my kernel density analysis. The suitability analysis is a good option, but most likely more for individual days rather than the every single day shown at once. So going forward, solutions for this issue could be to focus on creating new meetings on the outskirts of town where there are already not as many meetings as you see in Midtown. Yeah. So what's next? Really, what I think could be a next step is to get together maybe with local officials to see if there would be any willingness to work together with the Tucson Area Intergroup, or even just individual members who have disclosed they're part of the program, to make new meetings and make accessibility more of a centralized portion of things as a whole, because not everybody has access to a car, access to public transportation, or even bikes to get to these places. And if you know anybody that is willing to help a friend out in this sense, then please do so. Yeah, that is my presentation. And I thank you for joining us.